Now, Satanism is staggeringly common compared with the public perception of it. And there's a number of reasons for it. First of all, they're sacrificing people literally to the gods, the serpent gods. When you see these ancient accounts all over the world of how they used to sacrifice people, young virgins often, and what does young virgins code for? Children, to the gods, because they put them through the sacrifice ritual and they build up the terror. What happens is the terror reaches a point where a certain adrenaline pours into the blood, and the people doing the ritual then drink that blood and they get a real high from that adrenaline. But as the sacrifice is going on, the victim is also releasing energy, very powerful, low vibrational energy, and the entities, or entity, whatever it is, just outside of visible light is feeding off that energy. They're feeding off us like vampires in so many ways, and that's one of them, and one of the reasons for these sacrifices of people to the gods. The other thing is that and I've talked to Satanists who've seen this happen, or former Satanists around the world, they create an energetic environment which is almost a stepping stone, like halfway house, which allows these entities to come in to the ritual. I've talked to people who've seen these entities manifest in the rituals because of the way they have created the energetic environment. Anyone who's looked even mildly at this whole conspiracy in this area will know about Bohemian Grove in Northern California, where the elite, the presidents, the Bushes, the Kissingers, the Rockefellers, all these people go and take part in rituals under a 40-foot stone owl. And from what I am told by people who've been there in a victim state, they, in smaller groups, because it's 2,700 acres of redwood forest, actually do sacrifices there too. And all these people are involved with their satanic gods and all the rest of it. But it happens all over the world, and it happens in a sequence on certain days. You know, we've got a situation with Halloween where it's now like bloody Christmas. If people only knew what happens on Halloween, what happens across Beltane, May Day and all that stuff, to kids all over the world, in extraordinary numbers, there would be no celebration of Halloween. And what they're doing on one level, because they're interacting with the cycles, the astrological cycles, is why they do it at certain times when the planets, the moon probably, and everything is in a certain place, is they're manipulating what they refer to as the morphic field, the energy that we all live in. Like I said earlier, if you want to affect the fish all at once, then affect the sea. And in the new book, in an appendix at the end, I published this. I call it Confessions of a Satanist. It came to light early this year, and it is alleged to be, I can't vouch for its authenticity. What I can say is, after 20 years of researching this, it's bloody massively accurate. And it's supposed to be a guy who died in 2004. He was a high Satanist in Australia, who wasn't really a confession in the sense of I want to confess my sins. It was just basically an outline of how Satanism controls the world. And this is one of the things he says in that. What most people do not realize is that Satanism is a ritually based practice, and that this repetition, same place, same time, has over time left strong impressions upon the morphic field. They have to control the morphic field so that we stay in a low vibrational state, so we stay attached to that moon matrix I'm talking about. And of course, as I was saying, we are interacting with this field all the time, and taking in energy into the meridian system from it, and therefore it is affecting us. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm saying that this is part of the process of suppressing that field also, which is why they stuck them on vortex points. Now let's take this connection from Satanism, blood drinking, taking in the human genetic code to stay here longer, which is what some of these reptilians do, and the pedophilia. What's it all about? It's about energy. It's about vampiring the energy of children. The reason that we have sacrifice to the gods of young virgins, children, is because they want the energy of children before puberty, because when puberty happens, there is obviously we all know, there is a chemical change, massive chemical change, at which point, from their point of view, the energy is not as pure and desirable. This is what John Juan Matus said in one of the Carlos Castaneda books. He's being quoted here by Castaneda. Matus is the he. He explained that sorcerers saw infant human beings as strange luminous balls of energy, covered from the top to the bottom with a glowing coat, something like a coat of plastic adjusted tightly around the cocoon of energy. He said that glowing coat of awareness was what the predators consumed, and that when a human reached adulthood, all that was left of that fringe awareness was a narrow fringe that went from the ground to the top of the toes. That fringe permitted mankind to keep on living, but only barely. And that, although the pedophiles won't realize that, although the elite ones will, is what the pedophilia is all about and why it is so rampant in the upper echelons of this control system. Because while the pedophile is sexually abusing the child, symbolically here, it is connecting into the energy field of the child. This is why they have anal sex with children so much, even girls. It's because they're connecting in to the lower chakra, the base chakra, and they're drawing that energy out, or the possessing entity is drawing it out and feeding off it. This is why pedophiles tend to be overwhelmingly possessed people, because the possessing entity drives the lust for sex with children, and then when it happens, they draw the energy off it, drawing the child's life force out. And politicians in this control system, again, this is why pedophilia is rampant among the political classes. This is what the Satanist confession said as well, that Australian guy. Politicians are introduced by a carefully graded set of criteria and situations that enable them to accept that their victims, children, will be our little secret. Young children sexually molested and physically abused by politicians worldwide are quickly used as sacrifices. In Australia, the bodies are hardly ever discovered, for Australia is still a wilderness. In countries that are not a wilderness, they control the mortuaries and the crematoria, where they get rid of children who they want rid of because of what's happened. And it is rampant. I keep using that word, but it is. People don't realize. What happens is people think or relate the number of children that go missing every year to the number of times we see a story on the news that a child is missing and everyone's trying to find them. That is the tiniest, tiniest tip of the iceberg. Hundreds of thousands of children go missing in America every year. I've rung the states, because they don't have federal figures, tell you how many cars went missing federally, but not children. They said, you've got to ring the states. I rung a load of states years ago now. I said, how many children go missing every year? How many children went missing last year? And I added the figures up. What? Never seen this on the news, hundreds of thousands. Some of them are found, some of them have explanations. Not all, nothing like. And what happens is that you have the cover-up. There are so many stories where the story of this Satanism and this child abuse starts to come to light, and immediately the lid goes on, because the system controls the various aspects that can keep the lid on. This is just one example. There's endless numbers around the world. The Franklin cover-up. It was an investigation by this guy, John W. DeCamp, who was former state senator in Nebraska, and he started investigating this guy, Lawrence King, a major Republican who sang the American national anthem in 1984 and 1988, I think it was, at the Republican convention. And he was investigating him for financial fraud through an organization called the Franklin Savings and Loans. But then he discovered that he's running a pedophile ring and providing children for the biggest names in America. And he wrote this book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, again, they go together all the time, and murder in Nebraska. And what happened? Some of it got into this Washington Times, a mainstream newspaper, the connection to the Reagan-Bush administration, but most of it was totally covered up. I've been writing in my books now since 1998 that Father George Bush is a notorious pedophile, child torturer, child killer, and serial killer of adults as well. Said it on American radio. Still waiting for a response. And this is one example. A lady who became a friend of mine Kathy O'Brien, who was in the American government mind control project since she was a kid, and met her many times. She still corresponds with me now and again, and I've met a daughter that she was talking about. Lovely, lovely girl, totally shattered by these people. And that's one example of millions and millions that are going on around the world. And this is what she said in a book, Transformation of America. Kelly's bleeding rectum was but one of many physical indicators of George Bush's paedophile perversions. I have overheard him speak blatantly of his sexual abuse of her on many occasions. He used this and threats to her life to pull my strings and control me. The psychological ramifications of being raped by a paedophile president are mind-shattering enough, but reportedly Bush further reinforced the traumas to Kelly's mind with sophisticated NASA electronic and drug mind control devices. Bush also instilled the "who you're gonna call and I'll be watching you" binds on Kelly, further reinforcing her state of helplessness. The systematic tortures and trauma that I endured as a child now seem trite by comparison. They're not. I know what she went through. To the brutal physical and psychological devastation that George Bush inflicted on my daughter. And that's just one of these people involving one of the victims of this. It's incredible, the scale of it, and it's going on in this country. And what happens? The wall goes up. This is what DeCamp found. Suddenly ranks are pulled in, and the media won't touch it, the social services won't touch it, the police won't touch it, politicians won't touch it. It's the blueprint, it's how it works.